Hi everybody and welcome to RebeccaKelsey.com. Today I was just having a nice, kind of relaxing day. I was just finishing up some work for Girl Karma and finishing up Harry Potter and Pottermore, so I took a quick break so I could film the book chat for you guys. If you didn't know, I started kind of like a book club. It's very informal, not like too strict or anything like that, and I decided the first one I would do would be on Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or if you live overseas. In America it's the Sorcerer's Stone, but elsewhere it's the Philosopher's Stone. I'm not sure why they decided to change that. I mean, Sorcerer I think sounds pretty cool, but you know, whatever. So I'm reading Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, my Kindle, and I really enjoyed it. I first read it when I was in middle school, and I thought I would have a big chat on it, especially with the new Pottermore collaboration that J.K. Rowling has done with Sony. If you want to know more about Pottermore, you can read my initial post on why I decided to do this as my first book chat. And I put a bunch of notes on my iPhone, like, look at all these notes, just from things that I thought were interesting from the book and from Pottermore, so I'll go in order. So I first read the first Harry Potter book when I was in middle school, and I thought it was very boring, and I just didn't appreciate it. I would skip a lot of passages just to get to like the action, but I was young, I was naive, I didn't understand it. The first one was just not as fun. But rereading it now, I was able to, especially knowing the whole story of Harry Potter and reading all the books and seeing all the movies, now I was able to much more appreciate it, and I actually really enjoyed rereading this. That's a huge lizard. Anyway, what about the book stood out to you? Well, let me look at my notes. There was quite a few things that just intrigued me. So early on in the book, when Voldemort disappeared, the day that Harry's parents died, I loved that all of the wizards kind of like took the streets of Muggle London and everywhere, and they were ecstatic, explaining all the news and what happened and the rumors about how Voldemort was gone and how everyone was so happy and overjoyed. And I just thought that was really cool that they kind of like risked the statue of secrecy, and you know, they're supposed to only wear Muggle clothes when they're out in Muggle London, and everywhere else that's Muggle, so they don't draw attention to themselves. And I just thought it was really cool that they kind of lifted that for the day so everybody could celebrate and not worry about that and just go out into the world and celebrate with other wizards that Voldemort was gone. I thought that was really sweet and fun. Also, on most of them I have the page numbers. On page 130, Harry had a dream about Professor Quirrell, where his turban was telling him that he should have been in Slytherin. And I thought that was interesting, not because it was a prophetic dream or anything like that, but it was kind of like a little foreshadowing that there was something, you know, not right about Professor Quirrell and his turban. And it was kind of weird that he just had that turban, and he just thought it was suspicious subconsciously, like he just felt something, I guess, in his scar. And knowing, if you've seen the movies, now I try not to spoil, but I kind of go on the inception that you've seen the movies at least, but knowing what we find out about Harry and his connection to Voldemort in the last movie, I think that was very interesting, that the turban, basically Voldemort, was telling him, you know, you should have been in Slytherin because of that connection that they had. I don't know, that just was interesting to me. So after a while, another thing that I thought was interesting was that when Harry, Hermione, and Ron were suspicious about Snape, thinking that he was going to try and get past Fluffy and try to get the Sorcerer's Stone, one thing that I thought was interesting is that once Harry met the Mirror of Erised, he even thought to himself, who cares about Snape? I'm going to go see my parents again. Like, he was willing to put past, you know, all of the suspicions about him getting the Sorcerer's Stone and possibly giving it to Voldemort. He was like, you know, I don't care right now, all I care about is my parents. And I thought that was interesting that he had that kind of struggle, that, you know, initially you're like, oh, is he going to do the right thing or not? Another part, this also assumes, I won't give anything away, but more to books, if you've read book 7, because it's more hinted at there. But I thought it was interesting where Dumbledore, he calls Harry's invisibility cloak admirable. He's like, oh, you and that admirable cloak. And I just thought that was a very interesting way to put it, that admirable cloak. I just wondered if J.K. Rowling knew what that cloak was going to mean later on, and the significance of it, and especially the significance of that object in a couple of other groups of objects, not to Voldemort, but that group of objects, its significance that it would mean for Dumbledore. So I wondered if she had planned that from the beginning, or if she went with that line. Just thought it was interesting that she said that that Dumbledore said that admirable cloak. That's not really something that I feel Dumbledore would say. So I thought that was very intriguing. This is towards the end of the book on page 304 when Harry started crying while he was in the hospital wing because Hagrid gave him an album that had pictures of his parents because he didn't have any pictures of his parents at all. The Dursleys, I'm sorry if I mispronounced their names, I really don't know if I'm saying it right, but the Dursleys didn't have any pictures of, Lily and James. So Hagrid, he said that he had sent owls to all of their friends from high school, not high school, but from Hogwarts and stuff like that, asking if they had any spare pictures that they could give so that Harry could have them. And I just thought that was so beautiful, and it did make me shed a little tear. I'm like, oh, Hagrid, you're so sweet. But I don't know, I thought that was cool. So onto Pottermore. There's a lot of exclusive content that J.K. Rowling puts in Pottermore that we didn't know about from the books. It really expands on it, so that's why I really wanted to reread the books in conjunction with Pottermore. And there was a movement called FART, and it was there was a movement called FART, F-A-R-T. It's an acronym. I didn't write down what it stood for, but it's basically where wizards were like, screw this rule, I'm gonna wear whatever I want in front of the Muggles, and they named it FART. And people often associated them as being either cult members or students that were on a dare. So even though they didn't wear normal clothes, people just thought they were just really weird people, which I thought was really funny that they called themselves FART. I'm sure they did that on purpose. That was in chapter 5 of Pottermore. And another thing in chapter 5, which was more information about Ollivander. In chapter 5, also in Pottermore, they talked more about Ollivander and different wand cores and stuff like that. By the way, my wand is a phoenix feather. It is an elm wood, and it's 10 inches and pliable, because in Pottermore you get to pick your wand. Well, they have like this magical cute like mini game type thing where you get to get your wand. And then I also I'm in Hufflepuff, by the way. They sorted me into Hufflepuff. So one thing that I thought was interesting that we learned about Ollivander is that it says that his name is, literally it means olive tree wand. Ollivander means olive tree wand. We talked a little bit about the cores and stuff and the history as to how Ollivander became a wand maker, and it was something all throughout his family. And also he was like from like the Mediterranean and like some other thing like that, and how it was passed down through the family, and that he really perfected it to that his wands became like the best. So he only uses 3 types of cores. He uses unicorn, dragon, and phoenix. And unicorn hair is the most difficult to turn dark, but it is very faithful to its owner. Dragon is temperamental and can change. And then phoenix wands are very picky, which is interesting to me because I thought it was very cool that Harry Potter's wand is a phoenix feather, and then the only other phoenix feather from that particular phoenix that was given in Voldemort's wand. So another connection between those two, which if you've read throughout the whole series, you know why that connection kind of exists. So I just thought that was very interesting, like that, phoenix feathers are very picky. In chapter 7 of book 1 on Pottermore, they have the sorting, which I thought was really fun. There's some controversy as to whether or not sorting is actually accurate, because it looks like everything is kind of leveling out. Like there's no real skew between the houses. Everything is almost even, which isn't probable. So a lot of people are kind of worried about that, but I got Hufflepuff, and I actually agree. I didn't think I would be Hufflepuff. I thought I would be more of either a Slytherin or a Ravenclaw. Because the houses, they have misconceptions. They're like, Slytherins are bad, blah, blah, blah. But really, it's based on core characteristics. Hufflepuffs are more loyal. I believe that's what they say for Hufflepuffs. Ravenclaws are obviously smarts, and then Gryffindors are bravery, and then Slytherin is ambition, which ambition can often go wrong, which is why they say Slytherins are evil and all that junk. But anyway, so I think that, I'm pretty sure, I'm not as confident about Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw. I'm not quite sure if I got those characteristics right, but for sure the other ones are. So in chapter 7 is where the sorting hat is, just in case you're wondering if you're going through and you want to be sorted. You can just kind of skip to chapter 7 and go back if you want. Now, also in chapter 7, we learned the most about McGonagall, which is the most interesting thing to me in all of Pottermore that I've seen so far, is the background that we learned on Minerva McGonagall, which is the professor, she's the professor, the head of Gryffindor, professor of divination, not divination, of transfiguration. And I just thought it was the most interesting thing. So the background that we learned is that Minerva is born of a wizard mother and a reverend father. Now, they fell in love, got a text message, but they fell in love when she was 18 years old, and she ran off to be with him. They eloped, and then she got pregnant. And she did not tell her reverend husband at all that she was a wizard. She kept that a secret and just stayed, you know, kind of pretended to be Muggle and tried to live with the Muggles and basically left her community of wizards. But then she became more like shut in and sad when Minerva was born, because almost immediately after birth she started exhibiting magical signs, and she was very concerned for her daughter, so she eventually told her husband what she was and what Minerva was, because she was going to get an entrance into Hogwarts. She was going to go to magic school. So she told her husband, and it did not go well. They still stayed together, but the trust was really broken, and Minerva's mother was always sad because she couldn't explore that part of her. Being a wizard is a huge part of you, I would imagine. So it didn't go well at all. So that was kind of the background, and then we find out that Minerva actually fell in love with a Muggle, just like her mother, and they were going to get married, and then she called it off because of the way everything was with her mother. She knew that even if she told her husband or her boyfriend or fiance, I guess, Minerva knew that even if she told him, he would not go to London with her, that he would stay with his farm. So she said, I'm not going to be like my mother. I'm not going to hide away my wand. I can't marry you. And then it was like this whole thing, and it was very dramatic because she couldn't tell him why she wasn't going to marry him, because then she would break the statute of secrecy and, you know, explain that she was a wizard, and that wouldn't have worked out. So she left him, and she was very sad. The Ministry of Magic for a while, and she was given a promotion, but she turned it down and spoke to Hogwarts, and they accepted her as a teacher to work along with Dumbledore, because at the time Dumbledore wasn't headmaster yet. So then she worked with Dumbledore. Everything turned out well. She eventually got married again, but then sadly that guy actually died, which was just horrible. But her husband died 3 years after they got married because a tentacula bit him, which I don't remember what a tentacula is, but obviously it's poisonous, and he died, which really sucked. And then she stayed single for the rest of like the book. She didn't find anybody else, which was really sad. Interesting thing that I learned about McGonagall. And then now I have two other things that I thought were very interesting in the Pottermore exclusive content. In chapter 17, they talked more about Professor Quirrell, and how Quirrell is kind of like a play on Quirinus. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a god that there was very little known about, but he was often associated with war, and also a combination of squirrel and quiver to kind of go along with his characteristics of at least what he outwardly looks like. But really, he was just a guy that just went bad. But they do have a lot more interesting things about Quirrell, and how he was kind of like a temporary Horcrux, because he had part of Voldemort's soul in him temporarily, which was really creepy. And then the last thing that I wrote down here is about the Mirror of Erised. Now, the Mirror of Erised is actually the Mirror of Desire. When you look into it, it tells you exactly what your deepest heart's desire is. Now, I'll put out the phrase right here that's on the Mirror of Erised, but in the exclusive content, it said to read it backwards. So start from this side and slowly work your way this way to read what it actually says. Now, follow me. It actually says, it's a whole phrase backwards. It says, I show not your face, but your heart's desire. I show not your face, but your heart's desire. That's pretty cool. I never would have realized that, especially it's called Mirror of Erised, and Erised is desire backwards. So that's pretty cool. So that was all the things that stood out to me in Harry Potter Book 1 and Pottermore. As for what could be an underlying metaphor or lesson about this book, and I think it's definitely more about kind of realizing your responsibilities and what you can do for others, because Harry could have easily, you know, he didn't have to go and find the Sorcerer's Stone, he didn't have to do any of those things. It had just been like, hey, I'm Harry Potter, I don't have to do anything. But, you know, having that kind of more humble upbringing, which thank goodness Dumbledore didn't leave him with a wizard family. Who knows, he probably could have ended up like Dudley. He really could have ended up like Dudley. But he didn't. He persevered, and he realized his responsibilities and what he could do to help mankind, which was great. So, I think that's kind of what they were going for, especially since they had those little those little moments where he's like, should I really do this? I think I'm just gonna, you know, like fall in love with the mirror and just stay here and watch my parents forever, drown away my sorrows. I don't know where I'm going with this, and it's pretty hot, so I'm kind of like, But anyway, now as just kind of like a little side note, how did it compare to the movie? I think the first movie is definitely the most similar to the books, but also I'm pretty sure the first Harry Potter book is the shortest, so it might have been a little easier. But whenever I watch the movie, I get this like happy, like joy. Like whenever I see it, I'm just like, man, magic is wonderful. Like, I don't know, it gives me like the same happy feeling that kind of like Disney movies do. So I don't know, I really appreciate it, and I love the first movie to death. So that is my first book chat. If you're interested in being part of my next book chat, which will be in about a month or so, I'll make sure to put the exact dates down below in the description box, and I'll have a new post up all about the next book chat soon. But it is going to be on The Handmaid's Tale. Now, The Handmaid's Tale, if you remember it from my first book chat, that is my favorite book of all time, but I haven't read it in a really long time, so I want to reread it again. And I don't want to go straight into Harry Potter Book 2 and Pottermore Book 2 because not all of the chapters are ready yet on Pottermore. So I'm going to kind of wait another month and then see if they're open, and then that would be great if I could go back to Pottermore after this. But anyway, so I am going to be reading The Handmaid's Tale. It is more of a mature content book, so it's definitely more for, like, I'd say sophomore or junior in high school. It would be a little more appropriate from then on. So I will have more information about that next coming book chat down below if you want to participate, because it's pretty fun. Make sure to answer all of the questions that I mentioned, like what stood out to you, what do you think was the good metaphor, what did you learn the most about, what did you like find interesting about Harry Potter Book 1, just anything like that. Make sure to share it down below. Or if you have any suggestions for books that you think I would like, make sure to leave them down below as well. So thank you guys so much for watching and for participating in our book chat, and I will see you very soon. Bye.
You've got me running to the moon. You've got me running to the moon. You've got me running.